Hi, friends. Welcome back to Sips and Stories. I'm your host, JJ, and tonight we're diving into something that has completely changed not just my writing, but my faith. The way I now write with a spiritual arc. Now, before anyone panics, no, I didn't go and turn all my books into Christian fiction. That's not what this is. What I did do was make a choice, a conscious, prayer-led choice to write with purpose and not for clicks and likes or to make it into the spicy romance Hall of Fame, but to show the God who loves us even when we're a mess. The God who still shows up when we've run out of places to hide. Because here's the truth. Life isn't clean. It's raw, it's ugly, complicated, and sometimes full of things we'd rather not admit. Strong language, mistakes, sex outside of marriage, even murder. But you know what? Those are the very people God forgives. Those are the people grace was designed for. When we pretend that the people who struggle with God are all sweet and innocent victims, we rob the story of its truth. Grace only means something when you understand what it had to forgive. So this episode is about that. It's about showing transformation without sugarcoating reality. It's not to dishonor God, but to honor His mercy. Let's start with the With Wine series. So my characters, Alex and Roman, they were both very broken, but just in different ways. Alex wasn't looking for God. She was angry, rebellious, and constantly trying to prove she didn't need saving. Roman, on the other hand, was what I call a lukewarm Christian. Kind of keeps God in his back pocket for when life gets hard, but doesn't really walk with Him. Together, they show two sides of human nature, the one that runs and the one that hides behind religion. Both needed breaking before either could be healed. When I first started writing their story, I wasn't trying to write about faith. I was trying to write about pain. The kind that drives people to numbness, to pride, to isolation. And somewhere along the way, I realized that pain is exactly where faith begins. Alex tried to control her life with alcohol and willpower. Roman tried to control Alex. And neither of them looked for God for answers, and that's where everything started to unravel for them. With Wine Comes Wisdom is where the running begins, where we see what happens when people turn away from God and try to fill that void with everything else. Then came With Wine Comes War, and that's the consequences. The wreckage that comes from living outside of His will and the fallout of pride, addiction, and unresolved pain. And then With Wine Comes Wellness. That's redemption. That's where we find God waiting in the rubble, where healing finally begins, and where the happily ever after is no longer a fantasy. It's faith fulfilled. Because even in the darkest chapters, when it feels like everything good has been lost, grace still shows up. And when it does, it's better than anything we could have ever dreamed or deserved. And then we have Acceptable Lies. It's just a little mini short novella about Harrison and Amelia. Harrison gave up on God altogether. Amelia was furious with God for taking everything she loved, and neither of them were looking for redemption. They were angry, grieving, and completely lost, and yet God showed up anyway. That story is about divine intervention, the kind that doesn't knock politely and ask to be invited in. It's the kind that storms the gates when you're too broken to care anymore. Amelia's anger, her need to control her pain, her refusal to pray, all of it came from the same place most of us have been at one time or another: disappointment with God. And that's okay to admit, because pretending otherwise doesn't make us holy. It makes us dishonest. Sometimes God has to meet us right in the middle of our rebellion just to remind us that He never left. He meets us where we are. Harrison's anger ran deep. He was mad at the world, mad at God for letting everything fall apart. He thought he was finally living his life right. He was finally doing things the way he was supposed to. He had the perfect woman, the perfect future, and then it all unraveled with lies and secrets. So he conveniently pushed God out of the picture completely. He ran halfway across the world just to escape the pain. But here's the thing about running from God. If He's chasing you, you better run faster because He will catch you. And Amelia's story is its own storm. She'd already lost so much. The people she loved most kept slipping through her fingers, one tragedy after another, until she started to believe she was the common denominator, that she was the curse. Every time she tried to do the right thing, it somehow led to loss. She carried guilt she didn't deserve and responsibility for things that were never in her control. And in her pain, she built walls so high that even God couldn't get through. Or so she thought. In her mind, the only way to keep the man she loved safe was to stay away from him entirely. But God had other plans. Plans that brought them face to face. Not in comfort, but in confrontation. When their paths crossed again overseas, it felt like a coincidence. But was it happenstance or divine intervention? Only God knows. And then there's the rose. Lola's story is about forgiveness, about how hard it actually is to forgive. She just wanted to let go. She wanted to heal. But wanting and doing are two very different things. And then there's Nolan. On the surface, he's got it all together. He believes in God. He works hard. He's a good man, has a steady life. But spiritual maturity doesn't come from easy seasons. It comes from struggle. Nolan's faith had never been tested. He thought believing in God meant life would stay picture perfect. But that's not faith. That's not comfort. And God isn't in the comfort. He's in the growth. When I wrote The Rose, I realized that every character I've ever written, Alex, Roman, Harrison, Amelia, Lola, Nolan, they're all just different reflections, of the same truth. That every human being is wrestling with God in one way or another. Some in anger, some in apathy, some in guilt. But all of them are still being pursued by Him, by God. Here's what I want you to take away tonight. These stories don't glorify sin. They expose it so that grace can be seen for what it really is. Undeserved, overwhelming, and real. I don't write about perfect people finding God. I write about broken people who finally realize God never left. So if you've ever felt too far gone, too angry, too dirty, too ashamed, hear me when I say this. You are exactly the kind of person God wants to redeem. Because grace doesn't live in the clean parts of our stories. It lives in the wreckage, in the moments where we finally stop pretending we can fix it all ourselves. That's where true transformation happens. And that's what writing with a spiritual arc is all about for me. Thank you all for tuning in another week with me. And until next week, good night and God bless.